Okay, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the My Law in Spain property seminar. And today we're talking about property on the Costa del Sol. So I'm joined today with Sean Cannon from Panorama Properties. Hello, Sean.
Good afternoon, all.
And Keith Spitalnick from Target Property. Hello, Keith.
Hi, good afternoon.
Excellent. So we're going to be talking a little bit about the market on the Costa del Sol, what it did last year, and what it's going to be doing this year, in your opinions, and talking about the prices, hotspots, etc. So before we get into that, I mean, I've known you guys for quite some time, but Sean, tell us a bit about yourself, your company, and how long you've been in the market.
Well, I'm the sales director of a company called Panorama. We're based in the Puente Romana Hotel. And the company itself is in business on the coast here and specifically concentrating on the Marbella market 52 years. And I have had the pleasure of working with Panorama for the last 15 years.
Wow, quite some time then, Sean.
Absolutely.
Okay. Over to you, Keith. Same question.
Hi, yes, well, I'm Keith Spitalnick. I've been living here on the coast, helping people buy property in one form or another for around 18 years. Target Property Spain is my business. I took the jump and started my own business about 8 years ago, and we're based here in Calahonda in Mijas Costa.
Okay, so Sean, you're joining us from Marbella, and Keith's joining us from Calahonda. What areas do you both cover? So maybe starting with you, Keith. On the Costa del Sol, what areas do you cover?
Well, we try to specialise. So we take what I call a micro perspective. There's a lot of agents here that are very, very good at what they do, and they cover the whole coast. We don't feel our knowledge is specialised enough to do that. So we would prefer to focus on a smaller area, but be really, really good at what we do. So we cover from East Marbella, so I'd say Alveria, Cabapino, and we go as far as Fuengirola. So that's encompassing. Mijas Costa is the lion's share of our business, really. But saying that, we've actually done quite a lot for one reason or another in East Malaga over the last 12 months or so. That seems to be a bit of a hotspot, which I'm sure we'll come to later.
Excellent. Okay, Sean, what about yourself? What areas do you cover?
Yeah, well, we more or less cover from East Marbella, so kind of coming from Alveria, and then we're heading over towards the area of Estepona, the new Golden Mile, and going up into the hills to the area of Sierra Blanca, and then up to Benahabis as well, La Zagaleta and Madrigal. So more or less the high-end property market is where we're targeting. Okay,
excellent. So we've got two great agents with lots of experience on the line. And Sean, what would be the average sales price of your clients?
Well, interesting enough, Alex, the average prices have probably increased greatly in the last year. Probably so much, I think we did an analysis and it jumped more or less 60%. So before it could have been in the region of 200,000, ranging up to maybe 2-3 million. But really the average that we've done more or less comes out about 1.2-1.3 million is the average sale. But the range of prices would be now more or less anywhere from, say, 400,000, ranging up to properties in the region of 12 million euro.
And why is that, Sean? Why do you think that has increased like along those lines?
I think there's probably a bit of a perfect storm, Alex, recently from the point of view of maybe the seller, is that first of all, the transfer taxes were reduced, and initially that was meant to end at the end of 2021. But the Andalusian government, in their wisdom, have decided to extend that. So it meant that the higher rate of 10% was reduced down to 7%. So obviously, if you're talking high-level properties, 3% of 10 million, there's obviously very significant saving to be made. And on top of that, after the lockdowns across Europe, there was very much a pent-up demand for people to change their lifestyles. So a lot of people were working at home in lockdown in Europe, but they realized that they can manage their business. A lot of people who are working with computers are able to manage it from home. And they've said, rather than do it at home, why not take that abroad to where the sunshine is? So when they do their 4, 5, 6 hours of work, that they can step outside and enjoy the fabulous climate that we have here in Marbella.
Excellent, yeah, understood. So interesting how the market's changed in literally 2 years and those prices have gone up so much. So Keith, have you seen that as well? What would you say the average price is in your area? And has it increased along the lines that Sean's mentioned?
Yes, we've certainly seen things along the same lines. Sadly, not quite to the extreme of the Marbella areas. Our buyers aren't quite as affluent as Sean's. You know, if we did a sale for €2 million, that's a really top end sale for our area. But if I wind the clock back a few years to when we were just kind of coming out of the 2008 recession, and we had the Scandinavians coming along, snapping up bargains for €100,000. I mean, that's unheard of now. We did a bit of research as well, and our average sale over the last 20 or so sales, so the average numbers come out tantalizingly just short of €500,000. But that's a huge leap on where they have been in the past.
Wow. Yeah, so that is quite a big leap, isn't it, for the Mijas Costa area? And you're right, you know, those bargains that once were around have gone, haven't they? So it's difficult to find a property now for €100,000 on the coast, I would have thought.
I'd say it's difficult to find something under 200, really.
Right. Okay. So 2021 is a kind of a distant memory now. How was 2021, Sean, compared to other years?
Yeah, well, we had a massive growth in sales, and probably ranging in the region of we have done our figures more or less. The last kind of analysis of our figures was from July 2020 to July 2021. And during that period, we actually had an increase of completed sales and also in process of 60%. So a significant jump in the volume of sales that we've been doing as well. In terms of prices, again, it's a little bit what Keith had mentioned earlier on about a lack of stock. What we're finding now, the biggest issue that we're probably going to have coming into 2022 is the lack of supply of stock at the moment, and any agency that's worth its salt and wants to survive going forward is going to have to make sure that they're getting the best of the listings that are out there at the moment to survive.
So, Keith, how was 2021 for you compared to previous years?
In 2021, in terms of our revenue, was probably the best year we've had since I started the business. Not necessarily in terms of volume of sales, but in terms of revenue, because I agree with Sean, we were seeing bigger purchases. I think Mijas Costa, traditionally, our market has been your retired golfer wants to come over, play a bit of golf, live out his later years in the sun. And that completely turned on its head. I mean, when we looked at our last 10 sales a few months ago, there was 8 different nationalities, and most of them were actually outside Europe. So we were selling to a completely different generation of buyers. It was all these young digital nomads, you know, millennials with successful home businesses where they can work from anywhere, looking around the world, wanting to escape the big cities of, I mean, Hong Kong, we had Sydney, we had people coming from New Zealand, from New York, looking around the world and picking Europe. And where better in Europe to come and bring up a young family than the Costa del Sol, you know, the California of Europe, as they call it. So, yeah, I'd agree with Sean's sentiments.
And so, of those purchases, let's say last year, Keith, what was there a kind of dominant nationality that was buying?
Well, traditionally, most of our market have been British buyers, traditionally. Yeah. And I don't think we did a solitary sale to a Brit for the first half of 2021. And then suddenly, when restrictions were released, the Brits came flooding back in numbers. So for us, it was like a year of two halves. The first half was families from all over the world looking to come here and buy permanent homes. And then when restrictions were lifted, we had the Brits coming back in swarms to buy holiday homes. And I think the pandemic kind of motivated people to get their priorities sorted. You know, to think what's really important in life. Let's realise the dream we've been yearning for all these years. Very much split down the middle. Yeah.
And Sean, nationalities, was there a dominant nationality that sticks out to your buyers?
Yeah, the very same as Keith had mentioned there as well. The British and the Irish were very quiet in the first 6 months of 2021. And again, the floodgates opened then once the restrictions were lifted. But apart from that as well, Belgians, the Swedes, Dutch, French, so quite an array of nationalities were purchasing here.
Excellent. So you've touched a little bit, both of you, on prices. Did you see prices go up last year, and do you think they'll go up again this year? Keith?
We started to see prices increase a little, but not getting carried away. And I genuinely hope it remains that way. Again, the hardest thing for us, as Sean touched on, is lack of stock. I went to the CIMED exhibition end of last year. We weren't exhibiting, I was just networking and chatting to people. And it seems everyone's in exactly the same boat. There's a severe lack of stock and demand's outweighing supply several times over. I wouldn't be surprised if I see some increases this year, but again, I hope that we keep it under control and we don't go back to the terrible trouble we got in just prior to the last recession.
Sean, what's your point of view on prices last year and this year going forward?
Yeah, I like Keith as well. We're starting to see a slow turn on the increase of the prices at the moment. And that, again, that comes back to the fact that the market has been so hot for the last year. At the end of the day, if the stock isn't there and the demand is certainly there as well, it's certainly going to give the seller that element of power to feel that now. I think in the last 5 or 6 weeks, we've actually seen 4 or 5 bidding wars start to happen with prices that even from their asking price, the owners are being quite difficult. You might get some element of a discount where if you went back, let's say to even pre-COVID, probably 15, 20 would be the average kind of a starting bid. And then you'd negotiate from there, and everything would depend on the circumstances of the seller, what price they would eventually settle on. But now what we're starting to see, and especially what we would consider ultra prime areas, which would be Beachside, Golden Mile, and especially in around the Puente Romano area, is that stock is difficult to find, and as a result of that, the demand is very high, and owners are standing firm with their prices. And indeed, as I said to you, we've been in a situation where we've had 3 or 4 properties actually exceed the extent of 10 or 15% above their asking prices.
Yeah, I mean, you're in a very select area, Sean, you know, around near the Puente Romano and that area. In the kind of greater Marbella area, do you think is there more, so where you are now, there's probably less potential to negotiate on the price? In fact, it'd be the other side, isn't it? It sounds like if there's a bidding war, the seller's going to get more money. But for example, in the other areas of Marbella, are you seeing that people can put offers in and those are being accepted, or are sellers achieving their sales price?
The trends that we're seeing at the moment is that indeed the more modern, fully furnished, kitted house that has all of the bells and whistles included on it, that once it's being released, there's a high demand, because I'd say the average age of the buyers who are looking at this is actually coming down. So what they want is the finished product. They're quite busy in their own businesses and they don't want the hassle of refurbishing. So the other product that's out there also in those prime locations, take La Zagaleta for example, we're noticing that the properties that are finished are selling quite fast. And the older houses, La Zagaleta is more or less 30 years up and running as one of the best country clubs in the whole of Europe, I would say. But it's the older houses that are tending to sit on the market a little bit longer. So yes, there's still potential to get some deals out there. Every deal that you enter into with a client is its own world. But we would still say that there's opportunities to be achieved there for buyers.
Okay, great. And Keith, are you seeing that as well? There's still opportunities, even though there's a reduced stock, there's still opportunities on the Mijas Costa area?
There are opportunities, but fewer and far between. And I would say that most of the opportunities are getting snapped up unseen, you know, on the back of a video call. I mean, pre-pandemic, I think we'd only ever sold 1 or 2 properties on the back of a video call. And that was actually to customers who already knew the development, knew what they were buying, and just wanted to check the view from the terrace, for example. But since the pandemic, it's become the norm. And, you know, there's such a big difference between supply and demand at the moment that when we get an opportunity, I could sell it 5, 6, 7 times over, unseen.
Right. Yeah, we saw that as well certainly during COVID times. People were buying. There's a great window of opportunity during COVID times, wasn't there? Because there was a lot of uncertainty, and we did have some very clever buyers coming into the market and taking advantage of that. And they saw those properties and bought them unseen, and then came and saw them afterwards. we're always recommending to have a survey in those cases. So yeah, interesting, Keith. So moving on then, what advice, Sean, would you give to buyers? So, someone coming onto the market now, they're looking at the Marbella area. What are your top tips for buyers?
I think probably the most important tip to give to the buyers to make sure, because the speed of transactions happening at the moment and the level of demand, is that if you really want to come down here, take the time, the expense to find the property you want to be able to make sure that you're able to move quickly to secure that property for you. And in my view, the key to that would be to find yourself a good lawyer, like yourself, Alex, of course, and make sure that you speak with your lawyer before coming down. Be aware of the infrastructure that you need to have in place in terms of obviously a lawyer, bank account, your tax number here, your NIE number, and make sure that all of that infrastructure is in place so that when you do find that dream house, that there's no delay, you're immediately able to put a deposit down on the property and move quickly on it to secure it for yourself.
Keith, what would your top tips be for the buyers? Yeah.
Absolutely agree. I mean, they used to be, do your research, do your research, do your research, but we don't need to say that anymore. People have been locked down for the last 2 years and all they've been doing is research, so quite often clients will contact us and they'll know about properties on the market that we haven't found out about yet. So I would say, yes, have all your ducks lined up. If you're financing, get your mortgage pre-approved, because in this market, no vendor is going to listen to an offer subject to mortgage, not when the cash buyer is going to come along in the next couple of days. So get all your ducks lined up. And if you see something that interests you, be prepared to make an offer and put a deposit down, because quite frankly, if it's a good unit, if you don't, someone else will.
Yeah, I think that's great advice from both of you, because we are putting in place lots of powers of attorney now for clients. They're signing those in their home countries. We're setting up bank accounts, introducing them to mortgage brokers, and applying for their NIEs, so that when they come to Spain, they're ready. And I agree that that's crucial. Lots of buyers are kind of quite surprised when they come to Spain. Sometimes they see a property advertised with 2 agents at the same price, or sometimes even different, and that's because a lot of agents rely on kind of a resale network. Do you guys have your own listings as well as using like a resales online type of product, Keith?
Well, as you know, traditionally down here, the market has relied on the American style MLS, the multi-listing system, where one agent has access to everything. I think what most agents are doing nowadays, although I can only speak for myself, is when we get a good listing on, we're actually being a bit greedy, to tell you the truth, and we're not sharing it around because we know it's going to sell to our database. So my advice to buyers would be, if you're looking at a specific area, find an agent that knows that area inside out, and in the hope that they can go out and find what we call a pocket listing for you, and that means a listing that's not officially on the market, but we know the vendor's interested in selling.
Yeah, I know, Sean, you've told me about some of the stories, your sellers, and that's quite true. You've got those pocket listings as well.
Well, it depends. We've had a scenario where the mindset is maybe in the ultra prime market changing a little bit, where before traditionally you would ask a client for an asking price, and then obviously you would tour clients and they would come and have a look and they place an offer. But on the ultra prime, really what's happening, we nearly have a waiting list of clients that want certain areas already, and it's a little bit like the British system, whereby we would say opening bids would start at a certain price. And we would contact some of those clients beforehand. We'd sit down and let them know where the bidding starts. And then we have an open bid system on those, and whoever put your best bid forward. And then sometimes it could go to a second round where you have 2 clients that are bidding at the same level. And then we ask them for one last final bid, but it's all done open and transparent. And at the end of the day, the client that's willing to pay the highest price will walk away with the property. Sounds
like an auction rather than an estate agency, Sean, right?
Yeah, well, in the ultra prime, it's going a little bit that way. And for the first, probably this is the first time in my 15, 16 years here that we've seen the market tend to go that way now, because the sellers are so secure that they have such a good product in a prime location. It's their way of ensuring that they get the very best price possible for the property. And we're happy to manage the sale whichever manner they're most comfortable with. But still, there's still other properties, as you said, as you move away from those ultra prime, there's still some beautiful areas in the that are around, whereby there's potential for improvement in those properties. So from an investment point of view, people can still improve and then resell, so long as they're buying sensibly and looking for a reasonable level of profit. And then for the end user as well, not everybody wants to have, super modern property. They're just here for the view, the lifestyle. So there's still quite a lot of properties there in the market where you can sit down, put a reasonable bid in. Our job is not to tell the clients really what price to go in it, but it's really to show them the market, educate them, and then sit down between both parties and find a sensible middle ground between both parties that both of them are comfortable with, and we move forward with the negotiation from there.
Yeah, so some great tips there for buyers. What about sellers then, Keith? It seems easy for them, isn't it? They're going to put it on the market and sell it. Are they going to do anything else?
Well, it's certainly a vendor's market at the moment. The ball is firmly in their court. Again, I'd say make sure you are ready to sell. So make sure you've got all your paperwork. Make sure you've organised a move if you're staying in the country and you've need to find another place to go and live in. And more than anything, I'd say if you're getting an offer and it's an offer that's palatable, take it. Because quite often we'll take a property on the market, we'll get an offer fairly quickly, and the vendor may think, well, that offer's come along fairly quick. Maybe I'll wait and hold out and see if I can get a little bit more. And then, of course, a few months down the line, they're often kicking themselves that they didn't take the offer which they originally received. So it's often a case of timing. Having the right buyer and the right product and the right seller together in the same moment.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. So we, on our website, people can look at selling your Spanish property, download our leaflet there. It talks about all the documents that we would recommend that they have ready to go. So as soon as a buyer's found, bang, all those documents can go off. And it's especially important if, for example, your buyer is applying for a mortgage, because you can send those documents they can send those documents to the bank and get the property valued quickly. So that's good, great advice. Sean, what would your advice be to the sellers then at the moment?
Well, it's similar to Keith's there, but I would say again a little bit when we spoke about our buyers coming down is to get all your ducks in a row. The issue here a lot of the time is that the paperwork, and especially in Marbella, there has been issues in the past with building licenses. So, and I'm sure you're all well aware of this, Alex, is that from the seller's point of view, if there is any kind of question mark over the paperwork, speak with your lawyer. Check with them the additional paperwork that might be needed. If there is, because here, when the LPOs became illegal, a requisite to sell your properties was more or less 83, 84. So if your property is a little bit older, there is additional paperwork that a buyer's lawyer might request, certificado de non fracciones urbanística. So to make sure that you have this paperwork in front of you, ready to go when the buyer's in place. Because to request that certificate and receive it, the time frame at the moment in the Marbella Town Hall can take anywhere to 6 to 8 weeks. So the mentality of a buyer could change rapidly in that period of time. Second doubts, trouble with second thoughts, or maybe trouble with financing. So it's best to have the paperwork in place, ready to go, so you can move quickly on it. And the other piece of advice I'd also say is that when you take on a real estate agent, is that for them, rather than just ask them to pull a figure on what do they think, put the hard facts in front of you, prove what the price per square meter on the average last 3 or 4 sales they've sold. So have some reality to the expectations of the price that you're going to receive, but make sure that your real estate agent is able to prove that information to you. At the end of the day, numbers don't lie, and you both need to be forming a team together to make sure that you can sell the property at a fair price in a reasonable period of time.
So Sean, it comes back to basically having a specialist in your local area, doesn't it? As Keith mentioned, so someone that knows really well that area and might have, a special listing that's probably just about to come on the market. So really talk, if you found an area that you like, we'd always recommend that clients look for an area first before they home in on the property. Basically look for the area, find an agent in that area, talk to them, and go and see them. Obviously see the area at different times of the year, because things can change dramatically depending on where you're buying, and then look for property. So area first, an agent, specialist agent in the area, and then go forward with the property. So kind of really to finish on, what challenges can you see, Keith, for 2022?
For us, it's largely a lack of stock. I mean, something that we've noticed, as you know, we're a traditional family-run estate agency, and we cover quite a finite area. So as such, we become friends with a lot of our clients. And traditionally, what happens in the third and fourth quarter of every year is we get the older generation that we may have sold to 10 years ago popping into the office, bringing us a pack of English shortbread biscuits, coming and having a cup of tea, saying hello. And these are our legacy clients. So if we sold to them in their 60s, when they reach mid-70s, bordering on 80s, it's time for them to think about selling. So traditionally over the years, that's what's happened. We've had in the third and fourth quarter of every year, our older generation come in and put their properties on the market. Now, we noticed end of last year, that just wasn't happening. They're not here. And I think they're of the age bracket where perhaps they haven't quite got the confidence to travel yet. They're still feeling a bit vulnerable. And as such, for us, I think that's one of our main reasons why we're so devoid of stock. So we're hoping that now that there's talk of the pandemic lessening to an endemic, that this older generation will find the confidence to travel and help us replenish our shop windows, so to speak.
Yeah, interesting, Sean. Sorry, Keith, interesting. Sean, over to you. What's in store for 2022?
Well, we're very positive about it. To be honest with you, we've just looked through our January figures, and we've had record sales for January. The government of Andalusia have continued the reduced transfer tax, so it's still very beneficial for buyers to come down here. Obviously, the market is a little bit hot. Keith had mentioned as well, a lack of stock is a bit of an issue. But glad to say that there's lots of new investors that are moving down here, building new properties, especially as we go down towards the new Golden Mile, Estepona area. So there's still plenty of inventory for buyers to choose from down here. And we would recommend you come down, have a look, and tour, make sure you have that infrastructure in place. And as you rightly said, make sure you choose the right agent for that area that can prove to you what the average price per square meter is, so that when you hone in on the property that catches your eye, that you can compare it to the average price per square meter, and you're able to know that you're purchasing some value at the end of the day.
Yeah, brilliant. Okay, well, listen, Keith and Sean, thank you very much indeed for joining us today. And anyone who's listening and watching this, thank you for joining us. There's lots of other videos about buying and selling your property on our YouTube channel, so please do have a look at those. There's also videos about buying a plot of land and building and appointing architects and builders. So thank you for joining us once again, and we look forward to seeing you next time.